Hello, 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 and good evening to everyone. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, a wonderful evening also, and welcome to the first bonus episode of the first edition. Not an official episode, this is a short little stream about going over some Anime Matsuri and what happened there. At least my experiences there, nothing quite so malicious. So, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? And we're back with the first edition. I am your humble host, the Literature Devil. And tonight, well, let's go ahead and talk about Anime Matsuri, shall we? There's a lot of things going on about Anime Matsuri. Just a whole lot of things, mostly good. Mostly good. I was there only one day on Friday. Got to meet, or I got at least to see all the big heroes of I Stand with Vic. Ty Beard, the uh, the the drunk internet lawyer whose name is now Rick Nikita on this stream, and that umbrella guy, of course, and Hirohei. Now, Hirohei, I haven't really watched much of, but he was also entertaining. He was really good at what he was doing. He was really good on the panel. One thing that's going around, at least the Kick Vic people are spreading around, and that I wanted to address was the fact that Anime Matsuri was a failure. I put that in the description. Was it a failure? No, absolutely not. I mean, the first of all, the place where it took place was huge and had three stories, about three floors. So each floor was also huge. I wish I could have gone and met everyone. Yeah, it was very fun, and if they, although I think at least that umbrella guy and Nick Ricada has both said that they are interested in doing another convention, and at least maybe possibly this year if things work out properly, of course. Dual Office. I've been hearing quite an uproar about Anime Matsuri. I was heavily confused. I was there, as I said, I was only there on Friday, but as far as I can see, as far as I saw, it went out without a hitch. There was no real maliciousness. The boycott Anime Matsuri crowd, the Kick Vic crowd, they ended up not doing anything at all other than sniping pictures of Tug and the others. And of course, they have to paint their own little narrative. But it was excellent. Well, going on a more positive note, the thing I really enjoyed over there was getting some artwork. I think my favorite artist over there was Pascal Productions, and I can go ahead. I do have one image saved. Let me see if you're interested in seeing that. Go ahead and get that up there. Done. Fix it up a little bit. What happened at the Anime Matsuri? It was a lot of people were there. They're trying to a lot of the anti-Anime Matsuri people. They're trying to purvey the or convey the narrative that it was a complete bust. That no one wanted to go there. Everyone listens to them and didn't want to go see Vic. Everyone wanted to boycott it. Everyone was boycotting it because of Vic, and that just isn't true. That's untrue. The place was packed, but although there were some spots. I mean, there were some open spots because of course this wasn't Hong Kong. This was America. We don't have we have space here, and in Texas they have a lot of space there. I mean, have you looked at the property values? It's really cheap to buy a lot of land. So yeah, there's a lot of space in Texas. So I mean, I don't know I'm not really sure how many people were at Anime Matsuri, but there were three floors, like I said, and there were a lot of little stations. The main floor had all the artists and conveyors and vendors, but then off to the side, of course, they had place for video games. It was even dark, the way video gamers like to have it. And one thing I really enjoyed was the Super Smash Brothers competition. I really like watching competitions. It was very interesting. They were all amazing. They were all really gifted at playing Super Smash Brothers. Right? I got the. Let me go ahead and put this up here. And there we go. That is my favorite painting that I bought from Pasquale Productions. I bought a few. I bought about three of them. This is my favorite though. I bought this one in the giant poster size. And the reason I picked this person's art in particular is because I mean there were a lot of very talented artists over there at Anime Matsuri. A lot of them I would have enjoyed buying from them. But one thing I noticed is that a lot of them didn't fit my tastes, and the reason for that is a lot of them seem to do like the digital art sort of thing, where everything seems crisp and perfect, and that's good. I mean, it looks like a nice professional piece, but if I'm going to go buy art, right, I'm not person. This is a personal thing. This is not something that I'm going. This is not a philosophy I think people should follow. This is just personal thing. But I don't like things to be too perfect. I rather enjoy things having a little bit of sloppiness to it, a little bit of passion to it, and this is why I like this watercolor style that this particular artist used. And it's you could see the motion, you could see the life, you could see all the mistakes, or not really mistakes. I mean, you can see because he probably did this on purpose, but you can see all the I can see the passion in here. I can see all the strokes of the brush. I can it's actually very calling towards the anime itself, Samurai Champloo, which is one of my favorite anime, even way before years and years back. Like I said, I'm maybe a novice in the realm of anime, but I did have my select few that I really enjoyed, and at least in the top five, if not number one, was Samurai Champloo. So I bought the poster of Mugen and Jean fighting, and I also bought the singles of just Mugen and just Jean. I would have bought Fu, but they didn't have them. They didn't have Fu there. But she is available on the artist's website, so I'm thinking about getting that one just to complete my little collection here. But another thing I also got was Berserk. I got, of course, I went to the manga section. I mean, why shouldn't I? Of course, I did. I looked around for manga that I enjoyed. I'm not really a big reader of manga either, oddly enough. And then, of course, again for the specific few. So I've read Rurouni Kenshin, and I've read the first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh. Now, before I went all card games. I mean, I highly recommend anyone read um, the first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh. Let me see here. Rosemary Mori, do you like Amano art? Best known for Final Fantasy and Vampire Hunter D. Also some Sandman. I really like the art of Sandman. I think everything that happens in every piece of art in Sandman. I like the surrealness of Sandman. How it's there but not there. It's you can see the like the surreal feeling that really fits with the character. Vampire Hunter D, Final Fantasy. Other than the games, I haven't really seen any Final Fantasy art, other than, of course, other fan art. One second here. Let me see here. Because this is another artist I really enjoyed, but it's not an anime artist. He's the artist that works with Hunter S. Thompson, or used to work with Hunter S. Thompson for his works. I believe it was. Yes, it's Ralph Steadman. Ralph Steadman. I really enjoy his work, and I don't have any Ralph Steadman pictures saved here. Might be we'll get some second, but his work is very very surreal. It really fits with the style of Hunter S. Thompson's personality. This drugged up, drug fueled insanity. Get some and yeah, like I said, drug fueled insanity. A lot of the it's I don't have another way to describe it other than this. It's like a sloppiness to it. It's not the opposite of perfect. It's not perfect. I appreciate the the ugliness, some little bit of ugliness, a little bit of something that's off when I choose artwork to that's something I'm going to hang up. Of course, if I'm looking at comics, sometimes I don't really need that surrealness. Sandman does a really good job of combining both views. Tank Ferret Art, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is surprisingly a good read. Picked up random older issue and it was pleasantly surprised. Yes. Absolutely. The first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Before it gets tainted by the uh, card game, or at least overtaken by the card game, is excellent. It's like imagine if John Kramer, the bad guy from Saw, the main character from Saw, imagine if he had superpowers. Imagine if he had ethereal powers. Like if you combined John Kramer slash Jigsaw with Cthulhu. That's basically what you have when you read the first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh. I remember there's one specific incident because he is still the king of games. It's just not. It's just more fitting because he's king of pretty much any game rather than just one of them. Samuel Dresden, your knowledge of Yu-Gi-Oh comes entirely from the Abridged series. I don't blame you on that one. And the Bridge series was pretty hilarious. I always liked it from the very first few episodes they published. But yeah, the first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh, excellent stuff. I mean, for an example, there was one there's one story that revolved around Joey. And remember, this is far from the anime. Okay, this is far from the anime. Just forget the family friendliness of the anime. Yu-Gi-Oh! I guess they call it like season 0. Or the first few volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was brutal and dark and perverted. Okay, it's not really for kids. But the first one story I can think of revolved around Joey really excited that he got a new pair of shoes. And Joey's parents are confirmed to be like neglectful drunks. So he works for himself and he pretty much buys these really fancy shoes for a really low price from what they're supposed to be. The thing is, the guy who sells these shoes has a bunch of thugs working for him, and so his scam was he sells the shoes to some guy he tricks, and then he would send out his thugs to go and beat them up and steal the shoes, and then those thugs would bring the shoes back to the shoe vendor. So then another guy would come in and say, "Hey, I heard you had these really awesome shoes for a really low price. Can I buy them?" And he would sell them to him, and the cycle would go on and on. But of course, Yugi gets involved, and he goes back with the shoes, or he goes to the vendor and he says, "Okay, I need those shoes back because those are Joey's shoes." And so the vendor says, "Okay, fine, whatever. Well, uh, these are my shoes. If you want to buy them, you can take them back or whatever." Of course, Yugi being the king of games, uses his powers to play a game. This is one of the more mundane games because it's just I think the vendor might have created the game. Usually it's Yugi who creates the game. But I think in this case the vendor might have created the game, or it was either Yugi or the vendor. I forgot which one, but it has nothing to do with shadow powers. In this particular instance, they gets a shoe, and then they take a shoe, they put it on the table. They put a scorpion in there, a poisonous scorpion inside the shoe, and then they pour coins inside the shoe. And then they take turns pulling out coin after coin, and you can take as many coins as you want per draw, but they take turns. So if you pick out one coin, this next guy's turn. The goal of the game is to get the most coins. Wind up with the person with the most coins by the time it's completely finished. So they take off one coin at a time because, of course, they don't want to spook the scorpion and get a lethal dose of poison running through their veins. So what they do is one at a time, and then the vendor, he gets his idea. He gets this brilliant, big-brained idea. He pulls out a knife, and he makes sure that you can take as many coins as you want. And Yugi says yes, you can take as many coins as you want on your turn. So he takes a knife and he stabs the end of the shoe, hopefully killing the scorpion. And then he puts his other hand into the shoe and grabs all the other coins that are remaining. And so the tension builds up when you think, okay, then this guy just killed the scorpion. He's going to uh, take the shoes. And I think the stakes for Yugi was that he would become this guy's slave or something like that. It's always huge stakes in these games. But then Yugi just says, "Okay, can are you sure you killed that scorpion?" And the what happened was the vendor's greed kind of ruined him in this game because he has all the coins in his clenched fist, but now he can't take his fist out of the shoe, and the scorpion is still alive. So the vendor gets stung. Yugi gets his shoes for Joey, and story ends. The bad guy gets a lethal dose of poison. And then, of course, there's that other one. I mean, don't get me started on Kaiba. Kaiba is a complete insane lunatic. No, and that's not redundant. He's an insane lunatic in there. I mean, he hires serial killers and assassins to kill Yugi and his gang by replacing his employees with assassins in Kaiba Land and rigging up an entire section of Kaiba Land to be. I think there was this one section where they put their arms into this device and they have to answer a riddle or else a guillotine would cut all their arms off. And then he hired this, I think he's called Hacker Man or something like that, this literal serial killer to chase them around these halls. And the serial killer was specified to have murdered an entire Boy Scout troop. These are just some of the things that Yugi and the gang went up against when Kaiba got involved. Serial killers and professional assassins. Sharkzilla 3000, sorry I'm late. I was watching John Wick for the very first time. Worth it. You are excused. John Wick is always a reasonable excuse for pretty much anything, if I had any say in it. John Wick is amazing. I probably should go over John Wick one of these days, because there's a lot in there other than just him running in and shooting everybody. But like I said, the Yu-Gi-Oh, the first couple of volumes of Yugi, excellent stuff. And that's not even touching this. Let's not even get into the first few. I mean, it's only the tip of the iceberg. It's violent and dark, and all the games are also equally dark. I mean, if all the villains of the first few volumes weren't so malicious and cruel and evil, Yugi himself would come off as a villain. I mean, all these things he gets involved in, they're like he's completely pure evil. It seems at times because he's not the Yugi from the anime. He's not okay. I'm going to begrudgingly duel you, even though I know if you lose, you're going to go to the Shadow Realm. He has this evil smile every time he gets into a game, and he knows he's going to win. Just look at his one of those smiles he gives, and you can say like if he was outside, if he was in any other anime, he'd probably be a villain. So, but I was at the manga section, and I was looking. I have no idea about manga. This is a bunch of titles I had no idea where to start. So, I saw Berserk, and Berserk I know is one of the legends. And I saw the deluxe edition, the one with the hardcover, and I got it for I believe it was $40. And I'm still reading it now, but it's pretty interesting so far. And I have heard that he starts off as your typical edgelord because he guts tends to evolve over time. But yeah, and that's absolutely true. He does start off as this supreme, cranked up to 11 edgelord of the 90s. But it's still very interesting. The world is dark. The world is very, very brutal, and I believe it was also one of the inspirations for Goblin Slayer. It's like one of those staple mangas you have to read. It's one of the archetypal, the ones that pretty much all of the present day manga writers have read and took inspiration from. So of course I have to get that. And I mean, you probably can read it online for free somewhere, but I mean, those are usually not very good quality. They might miss something, so it's really nice to have something a hard copy. The board enthusiast, hello. I'm not as much into action anime slash manga, but I will try to contribute to the conversation as best I can. Oh, that's no problem. Yeah, that's my favorite. Usually action. Uh, if not action, then something deeply philosophical. Probably something deeply philosophical, like Ghost in the Shell. One of my favorites, other than Samurai Champloo, was always Ghost in the Shell. The original movie, first off, and then also really enjoyed uh, Standalone Complex. There's a lot of philosophy in there, a lot of Eastern and mostly Eastern, as far as I've seen, but they have a little bit of Western in there too. They also have to go into speculative scenarios and events. What would happen, because there's a lot of questions to ask in that world, in the world of Ghost in the Shell. I mean, what would happen if everything became robotic? And are you really human if you have a totally artificial body? And that's basically goes over the soul. It goes questions about what is really human versus what isn't. What kind of philosophy is going into going forward as humanity goes forward in this technological age, in the age of monumental cyber terrorism, where cyber terrorism is the number one thing if you want to commit an act of terrorism. So that's interesting. I mean, that's always interesting to me. I like the and what really gripped me about Ghost in the Shell was first, and of course, you have the action, you have the characters, which are all very interesting. Then you have the philosophy, and it's coupled with at least the movie is coupled with this off-putting, strange music. I know when it comes in when the scene where um, Motoko Kusanagi is being linked to her artificial body when it's being created. It's a Japanese marriage song, as far as I know, as to signify that her soul is being married for forever to this artificial body. I know the manga of Ocean Shell is completely different, and I've heard that the manga, the movies, and the anime are all like pretty much completely different universes. But there's a reason why Ghost in the Shell, the movie, has made it has become so popular, not only as a anime staple, but as a pop culture icon in Western civilization, also. Uh, Doodle Office. What's pretty dark about the dark would be Pokemon in the manga. People would chant for Pokemon to get killed nonchalantly in gym battles, and Onyx later does get killed as they wished. Wow, I did. That's interesting. I haven't read any Pokemon manga. I was only familiar with maybe the video games and the anime. But I think I read maybe one Pokemon anime. I mean, one Pokemon manga a long time ago, and it was very different. A very different experience from the anime. But I had no idea it was that they really make it far more dark in the manga than they did the anime. It's interesting. Interesting choice, but understandable. Uh, Hank Ferret art, like the TMNT universe, multiverse. Yes, I think Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja. Maybe that's the wrong one. I would think about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which also started off with a very dark origin, and then became more family friendly as it migrated to the small and big screens. Pokemon, Samuel Dresden, Pokemon manga. If all those animal cruelty jokes we've made, all made, actually applied in universe. But going back to the topic of Anime Matsuri, yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, it was a very laid back, very cool, very easygoing environment. Everyone was friendly. They had a lot of good food there. They had a lot of interesting things to see and interesting vendors to go and patronize. They had my favorite was the weapons. I mean, I'm a big fan of collecting weapons, swords, knives, things from movies, things like that. I have a I have a personal collection of various swords and knives of my own. It's I always liked collecting those sorts of things. Even I went to a Renaissance fair one time. I uh, bought a full metal sword. Those are expensive. Those are the real expensive ones. Was the ones that are like full tang or that's actually cuttable that you're supposed to cut. Yeah, that has the ability to cut and it's made with an actual craft. Other than the the ones that are just for show, like the ones that are just kind of like made out of plasticky material. I accidentally bought a plasticky material sword once. It's not. I mean, it looks cool, but I don't take that much pride in it. I want it to be lethal. But everything else was excellent. They had a very good collection of interesting cars. The panel with Nick and that umbrella guy and Hirohei and Ty Beard was very fun and interesting. I know that the Kick Vic folks they kind of photobombed them, I guess, and they said, "Oh, look how small their audience is," or something. They're a cowardly and superstitious lot. So any spikes? So were you studying the blade all your life? Well, I haven't taken any kendo lessons, but I was always fascinated with swords and the art of swordsmanship and the creation of swords, like in blacksmithing. That's always pretty interesting because these things are weapons. These if you go back to European and even, of course, Japanese history, these weapons were considered part of the warrior, especially in Japanese culture. It's a part of the philosophy, the way of the samurai was this sword was part of you. This weapon was part of you. And it evolved that way because a warrior without his weapon is well disadvantaged to say the least. And the weapon was pretty much the symbol of their respective warrior. Let's see, Mary Moore. I go to Ren fairs, and yes, the good ones are pricey. Yeah, usually if I go there, I usually like to buy a really good, professionally made sword. That's pretty much all I'm willing to spend. And if I spend on other things, I won't get the sword. Tink Ferret art. The Kick Vic photos were clown shoes, especially to anyone who casually watched any live stream. I mean, yeah. I mean, you look at the photos they've been passing around. They say, "Oh, look, this is Saturday This is Saturday at 2 p.m. There's no one here." And keep in mind, I mean, these people were expected to be believed. This small gaggle of infantile, just losers. This craven coalition of corpulent cosplayers just going around and being just cowardly and malicious and not being able to face anyone. I mean, I bet if that umbrella guy, who now infamously wore a mask at Anime Matsuri because he's a quote unquote coward or something. I bet you if he didn't wear that mask, I bet you if people were able to see his face and everything, so some of the Kick Vic and boycott Anime Matsuri people were probably planning to assault him or something or mess with him in some way, but they had no idea he would be like 6'7" and wearing a Jason mask. So they just hid in the crowd, and when provided the opportunity to say all those witty, snappy things they say online, when they were given the opportunity to convey their point of view to the face to face with the people that they've been arguing with all this time, they just simply hid in the crowd and took pictures and then ran back to Twitter because these people are pathetic morons. Even the smartest ones are morons. And one of my favorite things that came out of this was when Nick Rekieta said, "I talked to so many people here who work in the industry, and nobody knows who in the world Shane Holmberg is." I I probably laughed at least for an entire minute upon hearing that. I mean, It's excellent, excellent stuff because no one knows who Shane Holmberg is. Everyone knew that. More people knew that no one knew about Shane Holmberg than people who actually knew about Shane Holmberg because nobody knew. I mean, what kind of guy who's in quote unquote important in the industry? What kind of guy who's important in the industry lives like that? I mean, that if you saw one glance at his little setup on Nick's live stream, just tell you everything you need to know. I mean, he needs some Jordan Peterson in his life. Clean that room, my good sir. Get a new chair. Okay, that chair is probably crying out in agony every time you move in the thing. Sharkzilla 3000? I wonder how a historic samurai would feel in a world of guns. He would most likely be really sad, no heart or honor behind a bullet. Actually, there was a time when those two things, when those two eras kind of collided. It was, if you watch Rurouni Kenshin, it's that time. You know, they're the Meiji Revolution. He says the Meiji Revolution a lot. That the Meiji Revolution is that time when the old samurai culture clashed with the new ways of the West. And by the way, even though I was a novice in the world of anime and manga. Ironically enough, Japanese history is one of the things I've always been interested in, even before the Japanese and manga thing. And they're not one and the same. I mean, there is a separation between watching manga and anime and then learning real, actual Japanese history. I mean, you don't watch cartoon series to learn about the American Revolution, at least not historically and accurately. I mean, I don't watch National Treasure to learn about actual facts in history. I don't watch Dan Brown to learn about the actual facts of history either. And I don't watch anime and manga, and I don't watch anime and I don't read manga to read about actual Japanese culture, and you really shouldn't. But Japanese history is probably one of the most fascinating things you could read about. So, in fact, if you enjoy the Total War series, not Samurai, Shogun 2 Total War actually has an add-on that takes place during that time, the time of assassinations, the time of great political clash, and so basically what happened was, if you ever heard of the Rival of the Black Ships, what happened was that the Shogun had pretty much had the control of the entirety of Japan, making the emperor more or less a figurehead, kind of like how the English Queen is now in England. So what happened was that the Shogun didn't. The conflict erupted between the people who supported the reign of the Shogun, the reign of the Tokugawa shogunate, and then the people who supported the rise of the emperor. Putting the emperor pretty much back in power. And the emperor was Meiji. That's why it's called the Meiji Revolution. So what happened was that one side was more xenophobic because Japan has always been historically pretty xenophobic and hostile to outsiders. So when the time came when Japan started to invite in a new subscriber, proper misnomer, disubscribe. Well, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the channel. Glad to have you. But when the Western culture started to kind of take over, that started a huge, giant clash between the samurai and the people wanting to modernize. Because before all that happened, Japan was resting heavily in tradition. So when the Westerners came over, the Westerners had guns, they had horses, they had rifles, and all that good stuff. While Japan was still pretty much more or less in the feudal system. The Western civilization had gone industry. Japan was more or less still stuck in the era of feudalism. That's so when the clash happened, the emperor, the people who wanted to support the emperor were the same people who wanted to support the introduction of Western cultures and values into Japan. Basically, it was a fight between those who wanted to preserve tradition and those who wanted to bring Japan into a new era. And the shogunate represented the old Japan, the feudalism, the age of feudalism, and that's and because if, in the era before the Meiji Revolution, there was the age of the country at war, which was every clan vying for themselves, trying to become the shogunate, the next shogunate, the warlord of Japan. And so the warlord of Japan then became the leader of Japan, kind of putting the emperor second. And it reigned like that for a very, very long time until the Meiji Revolution, which you see in Rurouni Kenshin. If you've seen The Last Samurai, it takes place in that era too, the age of conflict in Japan. And of course, The Last Samurai is not a good place to go for historical accuracy either. I mean, they say the samurai didn't use guns. That's nonsense. Don't believe that nonsense. This is romantic BS. Okay, samurai used guns. They used swords, but they also used guns. Even way back when all the clans were vying for power for the title of shogun, they used guns. So no, it wasn't dishonorable to use guns. And samurai weren't even that honorable. I mean, it's romantic history. It's romantic iconicism now that samurai were just this honorable class of people, but they really weren't. They were kind of the same as knights were in Europe. We see knights as this shining light of morality and chivalry, but they really weren't. The same goes for samurai. They really weren't this shining example of chivalry or honor. At least not all of them. Of course, some of them were. But just with samurai, honor was kind of built into their code, even if they didn't like it. One thing I would go for historical accuracy, not totally and completely, mind you, but the manga series Lone Wolf and Cub, probably my favorite manga series of all time, my number one by far. Lone Wolf and Cub. That artist, those creators, specifically and painstakingly made sure to remain historically accurate when depicting that time and era. And No Wolf and Cub takes place during the time of the shogunate, after the shogun has taken power. So the Tokugawa regime is in place there. So it's during that time, before the Meiji Revolution. Tank Ferret art. The Yakuza are the closest thing to Thieves Guild I think we have here on planet Earth. That's exactly true. the Yakuza have a huge a huge role in Japanese history. They're not really, they're criminals, but they're kind of like criminals that they're kind of like the mob, how the mob were in America. They're kind of like an actual source in Japan, like a social class in Japan. They're criminals, but they kind of work as a kind of a pillar of every society. Some of them are honorable and they actually protect places because that's how they work. I'm not an expert on the Yakuza portion of it, but that's what I've read. Tank Ferret art. Yeah, Lone Wolf and Cub is very accurate. Oh yeah, it's very accurate. I mean, they even the English versions even preserve some of the terminology, so they can properly convey the accuracy. And it was a tough time to live during that time, the time of the Tokugawa regime. I mean, it probably wasn't as bad for everyone as depicted in Lone Wolf and Cub, because the themes of that story is very dark and anti-romanticism. But yeah, for the most part, it is very accurate. If you want to read a story that's both interesting, intriguing, philosophical, and accurate, was Lone Wolf and Cub. And that brings me back to Anime Matsuri. One of the things I really looked for when I went to the manga shop was an old manga. It seems to be out of print, but the manga I was looking for was actually written by the guy who taught the guy who wrote Lone Wolf and Cub. He was one of the great senseis of manga creators. But going on from the manga shop, uh, he had. I was going to go to one of those live concerts. I didn't know it was one of those holographic concerts, and I was at first I was like, okay, not really was I was expecting. But then I ended up not going because they canceled it, and I was like, okay, I don't want to move this around. Besides, uh, it turned out that the concert I had signed up for was in the same time slot as Vic, and I wanted to go see Vic. It's one of the reasons I went to go to Anime Matsuri in the first place was to go see Vic Mignogna, and I did. I saw Vic Mignogna live on Friday. I wanted to see him in person for myself, because you hear all these rumors, you hear people defending him on the side of I stand with Vic, and you hear people demonizing him on the side of Pick Vic. But I mean, it's all hearsay. It's all secondhand. I wanted to see Vic live for myself to see what kind of a person he is, and you can get a sense for from what kind of person he is from his tone of voice, how he treats his fans, his body language, the way he reacts to things. And as far as I saw, he was just one big teddy bear. He was a he was nice. He was very respectful. He was an absolutely gifted showman. He interacted with people very well. He he knew his audience, and I mean, you see a lot of actors. Right? You see some actors, some voice actors. They have no idea, or they have no real love for the things they voice act. This is a job to them. But Vic, I mean, when at least the way he portrays himself. Of course, I don't know the man's mind, but at least the way he comes off, that he too is a huge fan of the things he acts in. He loves his job. He loves his fans, and he loves the things that he acts in, and especially Full Metal Alchemist. That's probably one of his favorites. If not his favorite personally, is his favorite because that's probably one of the things he's most known for. Tomberry Queen. I actually learned in my teen years that samurai and ninja actually used firearms. That's what I actually bothered to read about them. Before then, my knowledge on the subject came mostly from TMNT. Yeah, I mean, if you look into the realm of ninja specifically, it's a whole other thing. It's really interesting, and I won't go I won't go on the history of ninja tonight. I plan this to be kind of a short stream, just something to go over in my Matsuri. But I mean, if you go over the history of ninja, I recommend if you're interested in any way in the history of Japan, look up the history of ninja. It's really phenomenal, and it's of course it is a lot. It's removed from the history of samurai ninja. I mean, it's really interesting, and Naruto going to ninja. Naruto just romanticizes. I mean, it romanticizes heavily. I mean, Naruto ninja of Naruto, they're ridiculous. And like Naruto, I mean, I watched Naruto a few episodes. It was really cool and to start getting Dragon Ball Z ish, but uh, the the things they use in Naruto, like the philosophy they use in Naruto, the chakra, the hand signals, those were actually things used by real life ninja in order to focus their minds. And some of them actually believed that they actually had magic, or at least they wanted their enemies to believe that they had magic. And the thing about ninja is that they were skilled in pretty much every form of infiltration. In fact, ninja came the word ninja has something to do with their ability to hide in water. And I actually have an well, not an authentic ninja sword, but an authentic replica of a ninja sword. And the ninja sword was a. In fact, I use the when I personally use the term ninja now, I personally mean that this item can do more than one thing, because that's what the ninjas used. Whenever the ninja had an item, it was for multiple purposes, not just one item for a dedicated purpose. For example, the sword I have is an authentic replica because not only is it a sword, but it also has a reed at the end, which they actually had. Some of those ninja actually had little tools in their sword. And one of the things ninjas often did was they were masters of hiding in water. because no one thinks look in water. They might look behind bushes or behind trees or in tall grass, but not very many people were going to go dunk their head in a pond to see if there's a ninja hiding down there. So one of the things they did was they mastered the art of hiding in water. And when they wanted to infiltrate something that's surrounded by a wall, they would actually lean their swords against the wall and use that as a makeshift stepping stool. And then once they're over, they actually had the sword strap connected to it. They would undo the sword strap, get over the wall, and then pull the sword back up by the sword strap. It's because that's what ninja did. They used every item they used was for more than one purpose, multiple purposes, and they actually had. They had a whole array of interesting tools. And you think of ninja as assassins now, but they're not. I mean, they didn't start out that way. In fact, the first ninjas, the ninja were just spies and infiltrators. I can't think of it on top of my head now. Maybe if I do a video on ninja specifically, I'll try to remember this and read up on it again. But it was quite some time before the very first ninja assassination actually took place. But off the topic of ninjas, it's another whole thing entirely. But I just want to say one more time that if you are interested in Japanese history, you should probably look into the history of ninja. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to see their origins, and it's to see factual origins of ninja, and you get into the mysticism and the philosophy. But back to my Anime Matsuri, Rosemary Mayori. He confirmed Ed was his favorite in his Saturday panel. Wasn't there, but listened to Friday and Saturday's panels. Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, I could really get the sense that Vic was indeed a fan of the things he portrayed, and especially and particularly Full Metal Alchemist. And he had such a great time, just not only passing out things to his fans, but seeing the faces of his fans as they lit up, as they got this gift from someone they admired, and I got the sense that from the fans, they cared not one bit about what they actually got. The only thing they cared about was that what they got came from Vic Mignogna. I mean, on Friday, people asked for the box he carried things in. They don't care about what they got as long as they got it from Vic Mignogna because they love him that much. The man just inspires that kind of love. And that's not even getting into his Friday speech. And this speech was he got very heavy, very deep. And he said he wasn't going to do that too much until Saturday, but he still managed to bring out some he went heavy on Friday, and you think it would be malicious, and you think it would be him saying that, trying to victimize himself. That's what any other person would do these days, but he didn't. His whole thing came down to two main points, in that, one, he says that he's just like us. He's just like everyone else. He messes up. He makes mistakes, and now the moment I heard that, I know Kick Vic and these malicious animals of boycott Anime Matsuri would take that and say, this is this is totally an admission of guilt. The case is lost for Vic now. He's totally admitting to all the things we've accused him of. Of course they're going to say that because, everyone on Twitter is a bona fide lawyer, except for the actual lawyers, of course. But what his point was that, yeah, I mean, he's one of the most popular voice actors in the industry, at least on the anime side. And this is, of course, the first time I've heard Vic speak, let alone speak on live. Because I am a fan of voice actors, but I'm just not. My expertise, if you want to call it that, is more on Western voice actors, not so much anime voice actors. Voice actors who voice Western cartoons and animations, not anime voice actors per se, except for Stephen Bloom. Stephen Bloom I knew, and I was a fan of Stephen Bloom until he revealed that he's really crazy. So still a fan, but more of his work specifically. He's really good at what he does. He's a really good voice actor. He was probably one of my favorites. But with Vic, when his speech was that he admits that yeah he messes up. I mean yeah he lets sometimes at one time he let the popularity go to his head because he was just a guy who wanted to do something fun. He was just a guy who wanted attention. I mean he was a guy who wanted he wanted himself to matter. And that's something that I think everyone can more or less identify with. They want to matter because that's one of the bases of humanity. People want to matter. People want their opinions to be heard and respected. People want other people to recognize and respect them. And that's what Vic said. That's what Vic mentioned in his speech that he too was one of those people. Sharkzilla 3000, does anti-romanticism mean having a dark twist on the story, or can it be more? Well, when when I say something is anti-romanticism, when I say the term romanticism, I'm talking about the usual happy ending tropes. You know the actually, let me give you an example from Lone Wolf and Cub. There was a example. There was a story where there was the main character was paid to assassinate a rogue ninja, and the rogue ninja came back. I mean, because the rogue ninja fell in love with a woman. He left her there because he left her because she became sick, and all the people that hired the assassin, the main character, um, they just they wanted him to kill this ninja, and they think that he just abandoned this woman because he's a ninja. He just used her to get away and to abandon his own life. But the main character, uh, Ito Agami, he stayed with the woman. He found the woman and stayed around that area, knowing that that man would come back because he believed that he loved her, and he did. He did love her, and he did come back. Now, here's the difference between romanticism and a work that is clearly anti-romantic. Romanticism is not just a story about two people falling in love. Romanticism is the ideal situation, the ideal. Okay, when I say romanticism, I mean uh, valiant knights, the honorable samurai. What romanticism covers two people falling in love and living happily ever after. That's romanticism. The ideal version, the ideal scenario, the ideal ending. Which this is what we have as standard days, pretty much, more or less. So when you go back to this situation in Lone Wolf and Cub, usually in a story that adheres to our modern sense of romanticism, that when the ninja went back and faced down by Ito Ogami, the assassin hired to kill him, you would probably have something on those terms of Ito Ogami stepping up and saying, "Okay, you are no longer that man. You are no longer the ninja. You are no longer the man who I was hired to kill. You've changed significantly." Because when that guy arrived, he arrived just in time to see his beloved die. They didn't have time to exchange words. That's another anti-romanticism point, by the way, because in romanticism, there's always time for last words. There's always time for last words. No matter if they got shot in the heart, there will always be time for last words in a story about that adheres to the general modern version of romanticism. But in Lone Wolf and Cub, because it's a story that does away with romanticism, pays no mind to the tropes of romanticism. The ninja arrives just in time to see his beloved die in his arms. They don't get to. I don't even think they get to exchange one single word. She gets to see him, and she dies. So on the second part, the ninja goes out, faces Ito Ogami, and if that story adhered to romanticism, Ito Ogami would say, you are no longer the man who I was hired to assassinate. You are no longer the ninja. You are a brand new person. That philosophy that you are the person who you once were. If you've changed, you're no longer that person. You see this a lot. I mean, yeah, for example, Rurouni Kenshin, he's no longer the Batosai because he's changed his mindset, his morals, and his outlook. But he really was the Batosai. He is the Batosai, the manslayer, realistically. But it's that same notion where he was once the Batosai, the manslayer. Now, since he's turned a new leaf, he no longer is that. He no longer is that man. So, if that would be applied here under normal circumstances of romance. But because Lone Wolf and Cub is either anti-romantic or is romantically neutral, Ito Ogami faces off against a ninja and he just kills him. He kills the ninja easily. There's not even any words. There's no dialogue from the moment that the ninja comes in to see his beloved die. From that point on, I don't believe there's either no dialogue from that point on or there's very little. Probably maybe enough dialogue for Ito Ogami to announce his name, and then he kills that ninja. That's what I mean by no romanticism. It's just pure. It's more of a what will happen will happen. I mean, and the whole series is like that. And I hope that answered your question. That's what I mean by romanticism and what I mean by anti-romanticism. Or in romantic story, your knight will be a valiant, moral guy with shining armor. Your superhero will be Superman, the Boy Scout. And something that's anti-romanticism, you'll get something like Watchmen. What will be will be. There's no optimism there. There's no happy ending unless it's absolutely earned. I mean, a happy ending in Lone Wolf and Cub is being alive at the end, almost, not being completely destroyed and ruined. At least not completely. Maybe just a little bit. You'll be a little bit destroyed and ruined, but if you're not outright dead, then that's a happy ending for you. So yeah, that's yeah, it's sad, but it makes sense. Yeah. Um, if you're going to read a story that doesn't adhere to the modern aspects of romanticism, it's more than likely going to be dark, sad, and lonely. I mean, the Ito Ogami never gains what a normal anime slash manga protagonist would gain in the modern era, which is is it Nakama? I think it's Nakama. I think it's pronounced Nakama. But the group that the protagonist gains along the way. For example, if you watch Dragon Ball Z, Goku's Nakama includes Vegeta, Piccolo, Krillin. He gets friends and family that go with him along his journey. Ito Ogami doesn't do that. They set up that potential at times, but that never happens. They never stay. So that's what I mean by anti-romanticism or a work that's romantically neutral. It doesn't adhere to the happy ending philosophy. Botan, I was pretty disappointed after all the kick fic drama, finding out a lot of characters I like are voiced by awful people. Yeah, that really hit me after Trump got elected, because I followed a lot of voice actors before Trump got elected. Because, like I said, I'm a fan of voice actors. I like voice actors more than I like regular Hollywood actors. And they were all very pleasant. They're very fun, very pleasant. They talk about, sometimes they voice things for fun using the characters that you love, and it was all a lot of fun until Trump got elected, and they all became crazy. At least most of them did. A lot of them did. But it's always important to remember what Milo said. If someone in the industry doesn't talk about politics, they're probably right leaning. They might not like Trump, but they're probably right leaning, because you're not allowed to talk about your politics if you're right leaning in the industry. It's just a big no. You just can't do it. You can't be conservative in any way. I mean, yeah, your conservatives can have their thing. I mean, conservatives can be crazy too. But I mean, in the industry, you're not allowed to talk about your right leaning beliefs. So That's why. So if someone doesn't talk about politics, is a good possibility that the either pro Trump or pro Republican or right leaning in some way. Trump derangement syndrome, yeah, Trump derangement syndrome. It can hit you hard. It can hit you hard, and it hits your sense of humor first of all. That is the first sign, in fact, that you have been infected with Trump derangement syndrome. That your personality is greatly affected by the loss of sense of humor. The sense of humor, the part of your brain that runs your sense of humor and your ability to comprehend comedy, just instantly turns to mush. That's how you know that you've been infected with Trump derangement syndrome. Doodle Office, the manga series known as Corpse Party, is the complete opposite of romanticism. An example being one character that was given the chance to change the fate of the friend's fate. I guess it would be. Oh, here we go. Try and revive them, but only have their friend die an even more horrific death. Yeah, yeah. That's one thing I like about anime. I mean, I'm not the like I said, I'm not an expert by any means. I mean, uh, if you toss me a bunch of titles, there's a 90% chance I've never even heard of them, let alone watched them. But I have heard of Corpse Party. I haven't seen it. But one thing I can toss back is I really like this series, Modica Magica. I think that was it. I was recommended this series by a weeb friend of mine, and at first I was like, okay, do I really have to watch this? I mean, it sounded great, but the main characters are these little girls, and it feels kind of weird and creepy watching this show, knowing that these main characters are these little girls. I'm like, okay, I'll trust you. But it turned out to be great because it was. I looked at the story behind it, the creation behind Modica Magica, and it was intended to be a subversion of the magical girl genre. Because the magical girl genre is, of course, it is probably one of the poster genres of adherence to romanticism. But Monica Magica turned that on its head, and it was very, very interesting. It's very satisfying in every way possible. It had darkness. It just it took it led you in with the possibility of romanticism. Where okay, all you gotta do is say yes, and you become this beautiful magical girl, and you can do all kinds of things and fight evil. And then you get into the mindsets of what happens, and you're no longer human, or and bad things can happen. It's all magic and beautiful dresses, and then they die. And it's at the very end, it's about sacrifice and the balance of good and evil, and it's a very good series. I highly recommend it. Monica Magica is probably one of my favorites. At least the main series was. I mean, they come out with some more stuff. I haven't seen that one. I haven't seen the latest stuff on Monica Magica, but the main series is very good, very entertaining, and in no way adheres to romanticism. It just, in fact, it kind of plays with it. Here's where some romanticism, and it just rips it to shreds right in front of you. Excellent, excellent stuff. Wish the main characters were a little older though, be a little less creepy, but it's good nonetheless. But going back to Vic's speech, he says, he's one of you, he's one of us. He was just a normal person and still is a normal person, and he's subject to being overwhelmed by this sense of popularity because he is very, very popular. His lines were huge, and I can personally vouch for that. And I bet you they were at least 10 times longer than anyone who's on the side of Kick Vic. Because I never heard of all those people. But I'm bet you that, yeah, there is no way that their lines are nearly as long as Vic's, because Vic's lines were incredible. They were huge. They wrapped around corners. They probably would last for miles if everyone got a chance. But yeah, he says he can make mistakes. That's very, very true. I mean, nobody's flawless, and he admitted that all this popularity, yeah, maybe at one time and maybe even now, it got to his head because suddenly he felt that he was important. What he said mattered, and that can be very intoxicating to people. And he admitted that, and he said, "That's one of you." And I messaged Tug during that speech. Said, "If you publish this, you should probably title it Vic's speech, and title that speech, 'I'm one of you.'" Sharkzilla 3000. I know how you feel about your actors being jerks. My favorite actors was Jim Carrey. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I really like Jim Carrey. And then he turned out to be insane. And there's just big difference between being a little bit crazy, or having a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome, or just being upset, and then being literally insane. Some of these people went literally insane. I remember I followed Mark Gatiss, the guy who helped write Sherlock and Doctor Who, and I followed him. And on election night, he said something along the lines of, "Okay, America just needs a bloody civil war in the streets because Trump wasn't supposed to win." And all I said was, "You probably shouldn't be advocating for violent civil war in a country that's not your own because of a fair election." And he blocked me instantly. So these people are crazy. These people are absolutely insane. And that's probably why what Vic said is probably true for them also. They think they're so important. They think they're so better than everyone else. And they think that, they're morally correct in all things just because they're them. It's because they have the quote unquote right politics, which is absolutely not true. They are fallible, they are human. And I just didn't watch Doctor Who really or Sherlock anymore. And I think their derangement syndrome really started to take effect in that last season of Sherlock Holmes, which I think I finally watched after it came out completely. And it was just awful. It was awful. I mean, it went way and far and beyond the usual typical SJW awful. It was awful on so many levels. But that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother video for whole nother day. I can go over Sherlock in its entirety. I could probably make a whole video about the very last season of Sherlock, which was mostly just plain awful. But no more so than that last episode. But Vic's second point of his speech was what really got a lot of people to feel. What really touched the hearts of a lot of people around there, because I saw the comments, I saw the people, I heard, I could literally hear like this soft gasp. I could hear where I could feel the atmosphere in the room shift. It is jackknifed into something different. And it happened when Vic said this, more or less. It happened when he said this. That a lot of people out there, they want to have their opinions validated. They want to feel important, just like he did, just like everyone else did. But he added on, if you're going to become famous, if you want to become famous, if you want to get a following, if you want to create waves, excellent. But please, get famous, make waves, and be remembered for doing something good. Don't be famous for trying to destroy someone. Become famous, become great, become well known and successful by doing something good. And that was the crux of his speech, his Friday speech anyway. It's not about being perfect. It's about when you try to do something, when you try to make a name for yourself, when you try to accomplish something or be successful at anything, do it for the good reasons. Do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to do something good. And it's that moment that I was convinced, that exact moment I was convinced that all these vicious rumors about Vic, I mean, they can't be true. I mean, there's no way. If they are, then he's really good at hiding it. If they are true, then I don't really, because all these vicious rumors do not seem like they were able to be committed by a man who can give a speech like that. I'm not saying they're not true, because it has yet to be proven. But for me personally, when I heard Vic say that, when I heard Vic give those speech and utter those words, there's no way that I could stand against him. It felt passionate, it felt honest, it was raw, and it was pure. So if he turns out to be guilty, okay, fine. But at the moment, when everything is in abeyance, when people don't know what is true and untrue, I will not stand against Vic. I can't side against him. I won't side against him until I see definitive proof that all these rumors are true, or that he is a bad person. Then I can't stand against him. Not in any way. I have to see proof. I have to see that he is actually a bad person. Absolute proof that he is a bad person. So I went there to see Vic for myself and judge for myself, and the answer I came up with was, I stand with Vic. Until something else comes up. It's like that Umbrella guy said. Unless something else comes out, I stand with Vic. And that's the end of it. Samuel Dresden? Wait, do you mean Sherlock? I don't remember it being bad. Been a while though. Sherlock was excellent. The first season, the second season, and the third season, it went from good to great to back to good again. And then the fourth season was just awful. It was horrible, horrible fourth season. And especially the last episode where they introduce Sherlock Holmes' sister. I mean, that they just went way off the tracks on that episode. But like I said, that's a topic for another day. But yeah, that was Vic's point. That was Vic's speech. So I went over there, judged Vic. I judged him to be someone worthy of standing with. But everything else at Anime Matsuri was excellent. I mean, it was a lot of fun. They had a lot of interesting things to see, interesting things to watch. I got some art that I really enjoy. Rosemary Miori, exactly need real facts and evidence. Sandwich resin, I do remember thinking it felt convoluted at the end. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. I think I will make either a video or a live stream going over Sherlock. But yeah, it's basically what I wanted to talk about during this live stream. I want to go over Anime Matsuri. That no, it was not dead. There were a lot of people there. It was packed, and if people weren't in the building itself, then people were outside with the menagerie of food trucks they had out there. I mean, they had all kinds of things. They had a tea bar there. They had a little tea cafe where you can sample all kinds of gourmet teas. I was going to get some, but I had forgotten. But that was it. The narrative that boycott Anime Matsuri and kick Vic want to push across is absolutely 100% fake. It's a lie. It's a lie made by lethargic losers. I mean, these people are just pathetic. They went to a bar. I heard they went to a bar rather than stay at Anime Matsuri. They went to a bar because that's, it's like almost a living stereotype. I mean, what is the stereotype of the loser? It's a guy. It's people who just hang around a bar all day because they have nothing else going on. That's all they can do is just drown their sorrows and drink after drink, potent alcohol after potent alcohol. And Nancy K, I feel like the series, which flop off and entice the readers with mysteries and plot points with no definitive substance and when the end comes, they really f up. because they don't have one. Yeah, they don't have one. If you're still talking about Sherlock, yeah, complete and utter disappointment. At least in the end. In the end, I mean, last season. Like I said, the first 3 seasons were good, excellent, and good, respectively. Zhao Weierstein. The little I know from watching some Ricada streams is that Vic is a good man, and that's the sense I got from him. And normally, I get the vibe from. I don't usually like going up to these celebrities. I have in the past, and I always feel like, they don't want to talk to you. That they might pretend they want to talk to you, but they really want you to just give them the stuff they want them to sign, and then hand them the money, and then get out of there because they got money to make, and that's understandable. I mean, they you got to understand that they meet lots and lots of people, right? Like thousands of people, and it probably exhausts them. Also, this is a great source of income, and the longer they talk to you, the fewer things they're able to sign. But I don't usually like to pay for autographs. I don't usually pay for those things. But the sense I get from a lot of these celebrities is that they want you to give them their money and to leave. So I don't really mess around with celebrities at the convention. I'm really there. If I go to a convention, I go there for the art. I go there for the interesting things that are on display. Maybe some T-shirts, whatever they have there that are interesting, especially books. If they sell books at a convention, you bet I'm buying some, at least one. Doodle Office, you and your descriptions are just rich. Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah, just walked around Anime Matsuri. Wanted to see for yourself. So, I mean, you can think I'm lying or trying to push another agenda, but I wanted to make this stream specifically, or at least for one reason, that you have another voice out there that's corroborating people like that Umbrella guy and Nick Ricada. That, yeah, it wasn't a flop. People were actually there. There was a lot of people there, a lot of cosplayers, a lot of people just dressed up. It was full. It was lively. It had a life of its own. It was a breathing, living community of people who loved what was going on. The passion was in the air. The love was in the air for anime and things that was on display. That's it. That was it. There was no malicious undergoings. There was no weird there's no weird malicious things going behind the scenes, other than probably what Kickvic and Boycott Anime Matsuri were planning to do. But in the end, they didn't do much of anything other than picture snipe. And of all their bluster, out of all the things they said they were going to do, Boycott Anime Matsuri and Kickvic are total, complete cowards. They have no way to validate their convictions. They had every opportunity to. Botan, did I get to talk with Tug and Nick? No, not at least not specifically. I may have. I watched them, and I walked around. I saw them, but unfortunately, I have a thing about being photographed and filmed. Even before this whole YouTube thing, I always hated being photographed and filmed. I have no idea why. I just have an aversion to it. So no, I didn't. I don't think I went up to them. Not sure if I did or not. I think I know I did go see them. I don't remember actually going up and meeting them face to face. Tomberry Queen, did you see the final episode of the first season of Rise of Shield Hero? That's how I imagined it will end for Vic. The innocent, long-suffering will regain their honor in the end. Well, that's good. I haven't seen Rise of the Shield Hero. People have been suggesting it to me. It's on my list still. Brent Thompson, how much did the pass cost? which is their incredibly effective op costume. If they, I know it ranged. I think I'm not sure what it ranged from. I think it ranged from maybe as little as maybe $15 to $80. I believe was the 4 day pass if you wanted to stay all 4 days, and then of course there was additional tickets for concerts. But I do plan to watch Rise of the Shield Hero as soon as I get this final Comicsgate video done. And unfortunately, I had to do some editing on this Comicsgate video because I had planned a little skit, which would probably get the video taken down or something because of Vox's ad apocalypse. I was planning to. I might just do the skit anyway and then publish it elsewhere or separately. But it was going to involve sassy Hitler and his Startworthy manservant, Sassy Goebbels. I was going to take inspiration from how Hitler was portrayed in The Producers. You know, this flamboyant, limp-wristed Hitler. I was going to call him Sassy Hitler, but I'm going to take that out, unfortunately, because I don't think that's going to fly with how YouTube is at the moment. And it'd be really a real shame if the last installment to Is Comicsgate Wrong was taken down because of Vox's adpocalypse. Samuel Dresden, I don't think Shield Hero is actually done yet. I just watched the new episode today. Oh, it's still ongoing. That's interesting. Okay. I know Mr. Mediker liked it. If Mr. Mediker liked it, then they had to be doing something right, probably. Joe Stein, I have an undying grudge against Shield Hero. I suppose the folk who read the original source material also do. Oh, okay. It's one of those instances where you read the book and then you watch the show. I completely understand. Botan, you have to because now we know about it. Samuel Dresden, almost certainly true. Still going. Okay. Yes, I do plan to watch Rise of the Shield Hero. I might watch the anime before or during the production of the video I have planned after Is Comicsgate Wrong is the one with which will involve Western storytelling versus Eastern storytelling, which is the video I plan to produce next after this is all done. But yeah. The main points I wanted to go over was Vic seems like a good person. Very honest, very passionate. He legitimately loves his fans. I didn't get that vibe. I never got the vibe that he was in any way bothered by his fans. And he had a great time. I mean, he interacted with his fans like anyone else would, but when he did it, he seemed to be having a great time, as if he were hanging out with a bunch of friends. That's what it came off as. And he admits that he is human. He made mistakes. Probably not the mistakes that Kick Vic wanted him to admit to, or wanted him to be guilty of. But yeah, because he makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Anyone can feel overwhelmed when suddenly they're popular. But the points are that Vic seems like a pretty good, honest person as far as I've seen, and I saw him in person. And second of all, Anime Matsuri was not by any means a failure. It was packed. Artists and vendors were making bank. I mean, there were huge lines for a lot of these artists. It was great. It was successful. It was the narrative of Kick Vic, the narrative of Boycott Anime Matsuri, complete and total fabrications. They're just silly fan fictions. And that's probably the best way to describe what the narrative that Kick Vic and Boycott Anime Matsuri are just giving off. They're just fan fictions. Their own little worlds where people actually listen to them, where they're actually important, where they actually succeed at something in life rather than the constant miasma of failure. that they often have to suck up every day. Because that's what they are. They're all failures. If you look at them, that's pretty much what the ranks are made of. I mean, this is the same goes for anti-comicsgate. They're all made of up of people who can't succeed and has-beens, washed up, meaningless losers and has-beens. That's what the ranks are made of. The ranks of Boycott, Anime Matsuri, Anti-Comicsgate, and Kickvick are just filled to the brim with losers, has-beens, washouts, and total and complete utter failures. Also, they're ugly. I think what one person at that umbrella guy, Dick Ricada, or I'll just say the For the Fans panel. One guy at the For the Fans panel. I remember he just stood up and made a statement, and just called them ugly over and over again. They said, "Where's the question?" And he said, "No, I just want to make a statement. I just wanted to call them ugly. I just wanted to call them pathetic, and that's perfectly fine because they are ugly and pathetic. I mean, even if, and by ugly, I of course don't just mean physically, although that it can mean too. But I mean internally. When I call someone ugly, it's because they are ugly on the inside. They are ugly, malicious little rodents on the inside. Rodents in the shape of people, and that's what these people are. They have the shapes of human beings, but in their hearts, they're rodents, and in their minds, they're nothing but horrible, horrible monsters. Doodle officer zoned out for a second and just heard. Also, they're ugly. That's it. That was a separate comment I had just to add on, because they are. They're ugly people. Boycott Anime Matsuri, Anti-Comicsgate, Kickvick. They're ugly, hideous, malicious people. And that's why I made this stream, because I wanted to clarify, at least have another voice out there to clarify that Anime Matsuri was booming. It was full. It was full of life. It was its own breathing entity. And it was most certainly not a failure. And that Vic is not this malicious, evil monster. But as far as I saw, as far as I could tell, was someone worth supporting until something else comes out that changes your mind. Botan, inside beauty should match outside beauty. That is 100% true. Ugly people are not just physically ugly. Ugly people can be physically ugly, but usually when I call someone ugly, it's because they're ugly on the inside. Because physical ugliness, I mean, you can't really help that sometimes. It's not anyone's fault in particular. And I appreciate ugly. I appreciate the scars of life. There's a beauty in ugliness. There's a beauty in the scars. There's a beauty in things that people often push away. I think perfection is ugly. Really ugly. Unless it's something like in a car, something practical that I need to work consistently and reliably. But if it's art, I find perfect, crisp art to be ugly personally. Like I said, I like a little sloppiness, a little humanity, a little passion, as I saw in the creations of Pasquale Productions. Board enthusiast, I never asked, how does one become a part of Comicsgate? Well, I mean, Comicsgate is just a community. Unless you mean become a member of the producers, the creators of Comicsgate. There is a difference. If you are a consumer who buys Comicsgate, then you are part of the consumer community. But if you want to publish works and claim that you're part of Comicsgate as a work, as a creator, then you would have to make your creation pretty much politics free. I think some of them said that Timothy Lim his creation was entertaining. The Wall Might, which is, I mean, his stuff is awesome. The Wall Might series is great. Uh, but they say that he's not part of, at least his works are not Comicsgate because they're politics driven. So if you want to be a creator for Comicsgate, just remember that pretty much the only requirement is that, well, actually two requirements: make it as entertaining as possible and make it apolitical completely, if possible. I mean, you can just go with the philosophy of Stan Lee, pretty much. If you're going to put politics in it, only put social issues and politics inside your story if it's going to make that story better. Jal Weiderstein, do you do anything that is against the anti-Comicsgate narrative? I guess it vanished. Sharkzilla 3000, Skillet Song Monster, the secret side of me I will never let you see. I keep in a cage, but I can't control it. That's interesting. Nancy K, I believe Webtoon also has some really good stories. Board enthusiast, politics free, challenge accepted. Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard. If you I mean, okay, right at this point in time, it is kind of hard because if you are on the left side of the left, if you are one of those radicals, then you pretty much have to put politics and everything because that's all you know. But if you're anti SJW or anti NPC or whatever, it's kind of hard not to put politics in there because it's such a huge thing nowadays, and it's very tempting to put politics in there for the sole reason of triggering these lunatics. But I mean, if you put politics in there in any dimension, it more than likely will hurt your work. Unless you're Timothy Lim, because his stuff is excellent. Because there is a right way to put politics in there. Just don't make it malicious. Just Timothy Lim's work isn't malicious. It's just fun. I mean, it's a little malicious. I mean, he pokes jabs a little bit, but it's mostly just fun. He harps on the positive of his subject matter. He's making his main characters beloved and powerful and victorious. He's making the bad guys bad guys. So it's just a lot of fun. It's done in all fun. It's just comedic. So yeah, I mean, if you want to create a comic and then do it on the side of Comicsgate, then more than likely it will have to be politics free. And just create a character, create a story, and leave the politics out of it. Just rely on being entertaining the old-fashioned way. Samuel Dresden, unfortunately, anything can be interpreted politically. Not enough women, not enough, etc. Oh yeah, I mean, the outside looking in, your customers will say, there's politics here, politics there. But if you are the creator, and you have no intention of putting in politics, and if you don't, then you're good to go. As a creator, just don't put in politics, and I believe you'll be accepted by Comicsgate as a Comicsgate creator. Nancy K will look at Animal Farm, a story mocking politics. Exactly, and that's one of the good examples of how to do how to write politics correctly. That you just make it a fun story. I mean, you wouldn't know the whole thing is about politics unless you know about the history of the Soviet Union and how it came to be. Other than that, you can just enjoy it as a interesting story about evil pigs betraying people. I mean, it has its basis is humanity. Its basis is human lessons. It just happens to connect to politics on the outside. So, I mean, I like George Orwell. I like Animal Farm. I like 1984. I mean, his stuff is pretty good, and he's a really good writer. He knows how to put things together, and he's really good at making at writing dystopia in a really dystopic dark, Kafka-esque atmosphere, especially in 1984. But yeah, this was a short stream, a shorter stream anyway. That's all I wanted to talk about. Because I like the piggies and top hats. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good. That's a pretty good visual of the core lessons of Animal Farm. I'm bored. The bored enthusiast. I need advice. If a character were to initially give the impression of being feminist, who goes through an arc that causes them to realize their innate femininity, would that be an adequate arc? Oh yeah. I mean, a good character arc involves change. So they start off feminist, and then they go through a series of reasonable events that the audience can feel and the character can feel are reasonable, that change their mind from where they were as a feminist to where they were as, I guess, not so feminist anymore. And yeah, that's a good character arc. It's interesting because it shows uh, humanity. It shows change. And so yeah, that would work if written well. That's always the caveat you have to put on there. It has to be written well because you can have the best idea in the world, and if it's not written well, it's not going to work. On the opposite end of that, if you have horrible ideas but it's written well, it will work. So, good writing is always the staple of good writing, essentially. But that's basically what I want to talk about on the stream. This Vic is not this monster, at least he doesn't appear to be. He seems very genuine and honest, very passionate, very friendly, very good human being. At least that's what I saw when I went to go see him live. And the narrative of Anime Matsuri being a complete and total bust is a complete and total bust. It's not real or true in the slightest. Anime Matsuri was a complete and utter success. So I'm just going to go ahead and end the stream here. I The usual Friday stream might be moved to Saturday for this week. Something came up, but we will continue our venture into rewriting Star Wars either Friday or Saturday. I will let you know by tomorrow. Other than that, you all have a wonderful evening and good night.